One of the things we did was force
Yeah.
it. Right?
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, why Asheville or Buncombe County is similar to South Florida
Right.
with, again, businesses or just all sorts of different individuals in that area that know what recovery is,
Yeah.
or maybe just a little bit more open-minded to employment or treating them in a certain way.
Right.
And it's because they've seen time after time for decades now that there is a large chunk of these individuals
Yeah.
that do get their life and then become beautiful people, successful people, right?
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Finding New Waters podcast. My name is Justin McClendon. I'm the CEO of New Waters Recovery, and I'm joined today by two very special guests. First off, we have Hollan Steen, who is the Director of Admissions for Asheville Recovery Center. And we're also joined by Jacques Gilbert, who is the mayor of Apex, North Carolina. So thank you, gentlemen. Really appreciate you guys coming on today.
Thank you, Justin. Appreciate you having us, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, lots of things for us to talk about, but one thing that I wanted to start with, and I think you guys kind of come as a duo in this particular thing, is the substance misuse task force that you guys have going on in Apex.
Yes. I'll let my guy, because
Okay.
This is a really cool story and how it all came about. But this started with this courageous, brave young man that came into my office years ago.
Okay.
And expressed his vision, which happens often in my office here at the town of Apex. But I want him to paint the picture of how we got here. So I'll
Love
let you
that.
take that one.
I was going to joke and say what we should start doing is you ask Jacques separately and then myself, and then we compare
Let's see. Yeah.
how we got to the couch.
Exactly.
No, it's an important part of the story. It's an important piece to touch on, just to explain that overall, one of the main goals of the task force, like what it embodies, is the example is the connection itself, right? And essentially what I mean by that is how Jacques and I even entered each other's lives is kind of, again, it starts with him, but people think it starts with me. Right. Because again, he knew of me, he was in law enforcement in the same town that I was breaking the law.
Okay.
Right? So there was an idea of who I was. And then when I went to Asheville and went through treatment and started to put the work in, right? Again, there was this individual that I held in a pretty high regard that is, for instance, commenting on a Facebook post saying like, let's go. Or my man, right?
That's awesome.
Or just showing some reaction as I'm posting the clean tags 6 months, a year, 2 years. And so there's a guy that, again, if you think about it, a lot of individuals that struggle with addiction, we do end up having issues with breaking the law, comes with it, right? And so there might be this barrier between just a police officer and a person in recovery in the first place. But in a small town, there's also, the kid who got arrested, the kid who went to prison, the kid whose mother worked for the government when he was arrested. There is a story of shame and guilt. And a lot of stories have shame and guilt, right? But to have a mayor of the town where, again, the first couple of years of recovery, I snuck into Apex for holidays. I didn't want anyone to know I was there. Right. I'd go to my parents' house. I'd let them drive their vehicles so that my vehicle was hidden in the back. There was a lot of anxiety about returning back to the town again, where I knew there was an idea of who I was that was yet to be changed of who I've become over the years. Right. But again, all of that is important to say that there was a gentleman that didn't have to, right. That there was no no motive other than to be just a good person, took time out of his day to say, here's a young man from Apex who's in Asheville, who's putting the work in, and I'm going to just give him a high five.
That's awesome.
Right. But had he not done the high five, I would have never had the confidence, right? The vulnerability to say, can I come to your office and talk to you?
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. And with that, when you arrived in my office, this was during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that? And we were sitting there talking, and he said, I have this idea. And he said, I think you can help me accomplish this for the community, not just for himself, but for everyone. And what was really so powerful about that moment was, like, I didn't really know Hollan's story, like
Mhm.
completely. I just knew there was a moment, there was a point, and then he kind of just went away. And so I was able to be caught up on the part 2. And then here we are, we're talking, and then he said, I have this idea. And the point of the idea was, the goal was to make sure that everyone, we talk about it in Apex. We want this to be a welcoming community and the peak of good living, right? That's a tagline. But is it really the peak of good living for everyone? And what he opened my eyes to is there are people right in front of you that you may not even be aware that are struggling, right? And they just don't know the resources available. They don't know who to go to. They don't trust people. And he said, you're sitting in a position of influence. And if we join forces, if we join together, we can reach more people and connect them with the resources that they need, but also just breaking down that stigma, that wall. We need to just dismantle that wall. And he really, I was ready to run through a wall when he said that, you know, so, because, you know, how Hollan is, he's a man of great communication. So I was ready to run, and then he just started breaking things down. So I'll let you take the next part. So we were talking, and I was like, how do we accomplish this? You know, what do you have in mind?
Really, we knew from the jump that we were already at a deficit before we started, right? And that was the first barrier, or the first goal of the task force, was we need to accumulate a group of like-minded individuals who share the same passion. But if we don't create almost like a team that kind of, again, embodies different aspects of Apex, right? But to sit down and just start trying to educate, just trying to start the conversation. And that was, I think, one of our first year goals was,
That's right.
let's just start the conversations.
That's great.
Right. Because it was, again, a personal storied experience of a parents, right, who couldn't talk to their friends at work, right, that could not communicate, didn't know who to call because there was embarrassment. Again, it was, I'm not going to call my friend and say, I think my son's struggling. Do you have any experience? Do you know anyone with any experience? It was, my parents tucked it under the rug, didn't want it to leave the house, right? You know, show up to church on Sunday smiling, no issues. But that was the main issue in itself, was we have to break the stigma.
Yeah.
Because if we still, as a culture, right, or as a community, have that kind of mindset, then people, right, in my shoes are still going to fear. And again, for instance, I went to Asheville, right? And so I remember telling you, I said, why did I have to go 3.5 hours to find a group of like-minded individuals to take the time to care about me? Why is that not here?
Right.
That's right.
It's a great point. That's a great point. And I mean, I could really dive deep on the whole stigma theme. I'm a big fan of exactly that, right? Is that, you know, we have to call it what it is. There is a lot of stigma there. And that stigma, that a lot of the systems and kind of things that we have in place in our world, I think, uphold that stigma and continue to perpetuate that. And that in itself, exactly to what you just said, Hollan, it's my opinion that stigma is something that keeps a lot of people sick, unfortunately, you know, keeps a lot of people sick. So the idea was, let's find a way to educate. Let's connect people. Was that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
it was to show it was okay. That was like, the point was not to use Jacques as like a platform because he had a large following. The point was to say that in Apex history, a government official, let alone a mayor, would have never sat on a couch with a convicted felon with a sleeve of tattoos and said, together we want to change the world. Right?
I love that.
Never in a million years is going to happen. But what can we do by showing that, again, I have trauma with police, yet he's retired Apex police. Right. But I trust him. And I trust that together, again, what he can do from, again, a political side, or what I can do from a lived experience, but we have to let the past be the past, and we have to work together. Right. And one of my separate missions, but similar goals, is just, again, how can we stop thinking that we're the best, or a specific group is going to fix addiction, right? Versus there's no single group, like medical or clinical, you know, therapy, like there's no individual part of recovery that's going to solve this. It's going to take a group of all of us, a community, And then slowly but surely, again, maybe that will grow.
Yeah.
And I think that happened in year 2 or year 3 of the task force. Other cities or other officials were reaching out to Jacques
That's
or
right.
myself.
Great.
Hey, how did you get this started? We're interested. We want to learn about this.
That's amazing.
And that was kind of the second goal, was kind of just like, if you build it, they will come.
That's right.
Let's just do it and see what happens.
I love that. I love that.
And I think the thing for me was when you talked about, hey, man, just keep it simple. And what we've seen before in government, it gets overcomplicated. Like we try to paint this picture. We attach labels to everything. And all I wanted to be is just Jacques and Hollan come together. I happen to be the mayor. And this is no different than what I've done years before. 29 years as a police officer. I didn't take everybody to jail. I tried to find ways of helping them get back into society and do great. So this was like, I was just so excited. Like, let's do this, man. I'm all in. So I think since that time, we've accomplished a lot. I think we've changed the hearts of a lot of people.
That's amazing.
In government, that's what I like to brag on, because they were reaching out saying, hey, you sitting with that guy? Like you working with him? And we talked about having different people at the table on this task force. You said, Jacques, you got to have people there with lived experiences. You can't just have people in government there and have no clue of what they're talking about. And that really opened my eyes. And we did that.
There has to be a level which, right, Justin, that we in the industry that we work in understand that some things just naturally come easier to an individual who's been there, right? Doesn't make them smarter, doesn't make them better at their craft, right? But there's always going to be this advantage of someone looking at someone else who's both been there,
absolutely,
right? Who's both sharing some pretty not so fun stories. And one of the individuals is going through it, right? But the other individual is saying, I went through it too, but now I look at this.
Yeah.
And no matter what comes out of that, subject A's mouth, the person's eating it up.
Yeah.
Right. Versus, again, someone who maybe possibly, and I always make the joke, never even smoked a cigarette. Right. And it's not about the vice, but it's you've possibly never laid somewhere not knowing what your next move was, not knowing who you were, your identity, your purpose. You probably always had motivation, maybe dips, right? But you've always known, almost like a story, what you were going to do as a doctor, right? Versus being someone who, by all accounts, should have everything he needs, but maybe wants to just kill. Maybe just wants to kill himself.
Yeah.
Right. And if you've never had that despair, then it's just hard to say, like, well, here's a suggestion that worked for me, because you didn't need it. It didn't work for you. Right.
Exactly.
Versus the guy who did. And again, it was using again, like, we always need a brain surgeon, right? Whether they have lived experience or not, I want a brain surgeon working on
right
this,
there with you.
right? But if it came to, we talked about, someone that's struggling, having a person in uniform with a gun on his hip walking up to that person, just visually might escalate the situation.
Absolutely.
Versus an everyday person who's a social worker or peer support that can say, hey, I'm not an authoritative figure at all, but do you mind if I come and just chat with you for a little bit?
Yeah.
And that was like, that's one facet of using a lived individual's experience to maybe reduce those issues with arresting someone, right?
Absolutely.
And again, those thoughts originated though, but like you said, it's how can we also, like, Jacques has the power to change other people in government or other people so far away from what we do.
Sure.
How many people in his circle might not even know New Waters Detox exists?
True.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. But we have to get to that group to change as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more, especially that the point about, the impact of having someone that does have lived experience. I mean, it's huge, right? And the word that came up for me as you were saying that was hope. And not that you can't get hope from other things and other people, but it's just true. I mean, for someone to sit there struggling to be sitting in the stink and the suck, so to speak, and be able to hear from someone else that's not there anymore, right? That has experienced some change and some peace and happiness in their life, and be able to be like, okay, this is possible. I mean, that is huge.
That is huge.
There's not a whole lot of things that can replace that, I don't think, in my opinion. Great. So what happened from there? So you got together, we're like, okay, we got to educate some people. We got to do something about the stigma here. And then where did it kind of evolve from there?
we started realizing, hey, just like a lot of companies, media, digital,
Yeah.
social, if we want to reach large groups of people, we need to utilize that as well as just public forums or just, kind of town hall meetings or things of that nature. So we quickly jumped into creating a social media presence, adding it to the town page.
Okay.
So it was a resource where we started working on resources in North Carolina. One of our goals was to say that these are, vetted throughout our task force members of reliable and ethical treatment centers. And we made a description of what they treat, what levels of care, what insurance or
great.
options like
Yeah.
that. So on the Apex page, we wanted there to be kind of like, hey, you can call these people for questions, or here's some resources right in front of you, or here's again a task force of individuals that you can email at any time. So just almost like a helpline.
That's amazing.
But again, no one knew it existed, right?
Right.
And so I think the Peak Fest, which is a festival that happens every year, having a tent there and having a presence there was probably the first, like,
Yeah,
it was a
that
big,
was it.
it was a big
Yeah.
deal.
That's awesome.
That was like the reveal to the community right there in their face. But with that, I'm glad you brought it up. The first Peak Fest, I think maybe 20 people approached the table. They were like, they didn't want to approach it. But as years went on,
Yeah.
they started really surrounding the table. But it took us really getting the word out through social media and me, of course, talking about it.
Yeah.
There were forums in government that I spoke on, and again, got a lot of great response, positive response, like, man, this is a good model and we're interested in it. So, but he left one point out, like, man, you didn't talk about your mom, that she was like really a founding partner in this as well, and kind of created a framework
Okay.
and was the administrative arm to getting this really established and structured. So
I know
thought that was
you got
huge.
to close with mom because she.
Oh,
she-
okay.
she-
Okay. We'll
she
close
laid
with
it all
mom.
out.
We'll close with mom.
No,
Okay.
Thank you for bringing it, because that even goes back to the origin story of
Mhm.
again, it's like, yes, he showed me that I could communicate with him. He showed kindness, right? And then I took a leap of faith and reached out to him and messaged him, right? But all the while, of course, there's this still, I'm a kid, I'm in my 20s, right? And I'm walking around my parents' house and I'm saying, I think I'm going to try to do something with the mayor, right? And so there's a parent that could say, okay. Or there's a parent that can say, I will
Mhm.
I will support you no matter
Yeah.
what. Whatever my son is doing to help other people, to make sure that I and his experience doesn't have to happen to another family, let's make it happen. So having, again, no matter how kind of ridiculous the idea probably sounded when I was first just rambling, but to have a support again from a mom and a dad, right? Dad was in the shadows, but he was still giving me the nod of approval. And
That's great.
again, yeah, from the website, from the organization, the email, and getting a bunch of volunteers. Anyone knows it's kind of chaotic
Yep.
organizing
Yeah.
a bunch of but she was, for the first couple of years,
Strong.
heavily involved.
That's great.
And then, we're 20, 30, 40 volunteers deep at a certain point. So
That's
it allowed her to step back.
That's right.
That's amazing.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah. That is amazing. And yeah, thank God for supportive parents, right? Yeah, thank God. So I understand that. So there's still, I think, there's a quarterly meeting that goes on. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how can people get involved? And I'm in that same, I know you guys mentioned that some other, city officials have reached out. So what's the branching out look like? Is there ways that you guys are trying to get other towns involved, and how can people also kind of support the mission?
Yeah, what I've experienced with the municipalities, government,
Mhm.
other leaders, they're still not there yet
Sure.
on a model like this. They're still like sitting back and watching.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had a couple municipalities that came to the meeting, police departments, representatives from there, and so they're just trying to learn more and see what that success looks like and how they can take it back to their respective communities. But I'm going to continue to just go out there. I'm actually blessed with the opportunity to be on the Wake County Mayors Association. So I talk about that a lot, about the task force there a lot.
That's great.
And then also the State Mayors Association. So I'm the vice chair. So I'll continue to communicate that to them. And I think it's just continue to talk about it. Go to Peak Fest,
Mm-hmm.
create more opportunities just to get the word out. And whatever that looks like, having presence at more of those festivals. We just kind of just been stuck at Peak Fest. So I think moving forward, we got to get it out to more. So just continue to talk about it. Now we branded it Peak of Hope.
Okay.
So I think that's an interesting
I love that
way to do that. And so we'll continue to do it.
I love that.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned the first year that you did. Do you remember like what year or how long ago was the first time that you guys were at the Peak Fest?
I think it was 2020.
2020. Okay.
No, 21. I think it was 21.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I started speaking
21.
with you.
Yeah, 2020 was the year you came in. So 21.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I had the privilege of being invited to come and hang out with you at the tent, I think a couple of years ago or something like that. So I could kind of personally attest to, I mean, I think I had maybe an hour and a half or something available out of my day, you know, got the opportunity to come and hang out. And like, I just remember once we got started, people were just stopping by left and right, you know, and it was a lot of the same stories. It was, you know, like, you know, love what you guys are doing, or, you know, a family member that they wanted to tell a story about. And like, it was just so nice to see for that small little window of like, you know, people being willing to stop and express interest and learn a little bit or share a story about their own personal experience was just, you know, a little ray of hope, right? That, because I think, and, you know, not to monopolize the conversation, but this conversation about stigma and stuff like that. I mentioned before that I moved up here about 8 years ago from Florida. And I've kind of exclusively, the 8 years I've been up here, only worked in like the substance abuse treatment field. And that's one thing, and I'm not knocking Wake County. I love Wake County, love it. This is home, have no plan on going anywhere else. But the stigma is thick here. It really is. You know, and I compare that to Florida, where I moved here from, and it's there. I think it's anywhere. But it was a little bit easier, I think, for people to, or it was a little bit more normalized, I think, for people to talk about like the struggles of addiction, or, you know, to be more open about the fact that they were in active recovery themselves and things like that. And that is definitely something I've noticed here, is that there seems to be a little bit more hesitation for people to kind of be open about the struggles or the process of getting better. Right. So it's been interesting.
They haven't seen it.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things we did, was force it. Right?
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, why Asheville or Buncombe County is similar to South Florida, with, again, businesses or just all sorts of different individuals in that area that know what recovery is, or maybe just a little bit more open-minded to employment or treating them in a certain way.
Right.
And it's because they've seen time after time for decades now that there is a large chunk of these individuals that do get their life and then become beautiful people, successful people, right?
Absolutely.
So they know, hey, we should probably treat these people with the same courtesy or respect, if not more, because I know who they can become.
Right.
Wake County doesn't have it. I'll share a legitimate story without names or anything, but an individual who went through treatment from this area. And, you know, he was really proud that he went through treatment, and he was, you know, killing it and wanted to come back home, right? Which is fine. But I remember reaching out to him and saying, hey, do you want to be a part of this? Because we were going through trying to get personal stories and testimonies of Apex residents to, again, try to draw attention that it's here and people are successful. And he said no. He was a provider of some kind in the medical field. And he was petrified that if he was to even talk about struggling with alcohol on social media, that he would get in trouble. Living and working in Apex. And this was probably 3 years ago.
Yeah. And the sad thing is I believe it. You know what I mean? I believe it. We see it, and I'm sure you see it, right? We see it in this field far too often. You know, people for all different reasons, right? It's because of fearing, you know, judgment from their own family, fearing judgment from their job, or they work in a particular field, especially for physicians, you know, in the medical field, attorneys, I mean, all different walks of life, to where like they are legitimately fearful that if their profession or their board or whatever it is finds out that they have struggled, regardless of the strength that it takes to reach out for help and to get better, that they're fearful that people are going to see that as a weakness and they're going to judge them and maybe even take action around that, right? It's really unfortunate.
Yeah. On that point, I mean, I still have parents reaching out to me, and the first thing they say is like, hey, don't tell anybody, please keep this company, which is fine. Right.
Of course.
I understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Wake County, we got to really continue to move the needle there. But I want to share another story that
Yeah,
kind of
please.
connects with it. This is one about Naloxone in schools.
Okay.
Can we go there?
Yeah,
Yeah,
please.
this is
Let's
real.
go.
So we've been really trying to move that into Wake County schools, and they were really, there's a lot of resistance, like we can't go there, but really couldn't share why. And I think the task force, I know the task force, with having that established, it carried some really heavy momentum into the room to say, hey, we know what's best for our students here in Wake County. And not to mention, there are other counties who have been successful with having it in the schools. And finally, we were able to influence them to move in that direction, and now it's in Wake County schools. So
That's amazing.
which is necessary.
So that's underway, or that's been accepted? That's
It's been accepted. Yeah,
That's
They
amazing.
voted
How many
on it. It's
total
been
schools?
approved. They're 100% trained on all staff now.
Okay.
They have it in 40 schools, so there's still
That's-
more schools to go.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to hear
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But that great example, right, of being hesitant, but really not being able to say why.
Right.
Right.
To
That's
us
right,
three,
that's
a
right.
no-brainer.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But
yeah.
but why?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's I'm so happy to hear that that's the case. Yeah. If we could save one person's life, right? It's all worth
that's
it.
right.
Yeah.
You say that often. Just one.
Just one.
Just one.
Just let me get one.
Let me get one.
Because it multiplies.
Yes.
That's right.
Multiplies.
It
and
spreads.
multiplies.
That's right. I love that. That's fantastic. So how can people get involved? How can they help?
Yeah, I'm going to say first, just spread the word.
Okay.
Like, because we all know someone who is having experience, right, that can really use the help. So pass on our resources, pass on the website, pass on the social media,
Mhm.
because we want people to know that we exist and we have, again, the resources available to them. One of the things you touched on before is the Apex Police Department. So I think we're changing that as well, because not many departments have that resource available. So
Okay.
I want people to understand when they're in a crisis, they can reach out to our police department, and we have staff dedicated to take care of those situations. So, but yeah, so go to our website, Town of Apex, apexnc.org, and just type in Mayor Substance Misuse Task Force, and it'll bring up all the information.
Okay. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I'm also wondering, as we're sitting here talking, how can New Waters help? Right. I'd love to get more involved if there's anything we
Yeah.
can do to support or anything like that.
Can we trust this guy?
Yeah.
Can we trust him?
50-50.
50-50.
Yeah, maybe.
To
Yeah,
his
we can trust
point,
him.
yeah, it's just about awareness and letting people know it's there.
Yeah.
Because what we're doing is trying to just show an idea and hoping that bigger and larger entities and groups take our idea and do something with
Yeah.
it.
That's right.
Absolutely.
But yeah, there's been countless times we're just even talking about the fact that a mayor, that similar story, the willingness to
yeah.
give it a shot. And to your point, back to the Peak Fest, the first year, people were looking at us and they did not know what we were doing there or what we were, or they didn't want to walk up to the booth because that would make them
Right.
Right.
admit
Right.
that there's a reason they're at that booth.
Yep.
Versus in the years past now, people are hugging us.
Yeah.
People are saying thank you because we are changing the way that they look at this subject.
Mhm.
But it all starts from just continued conversations.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's beautiful. I love it. One other thing, it just dawned on me. What is this? You're going to speak at TEDx, I understand. Is that correct?
Let's go.
That's a pretty big one. I
Yes,
think
it
we
is.
can't gloss over that, right?
No, I'm very excited. We're once again, it's, he sees something in me and I look up to him and it's a mutual, but you were able, he was also a participant in the first one in
22.
Apex.
Yeah,
Okay.
2022.
Uh,
Very cool.
Yeah.
And again, I reached out and I said, I don't know how you did this, but and he pretty much said, yeah, I got you. And ironically, the curator and I did a similar event last year for a different individual.
Okay.
And then when she decided to do another event, she said I was the first on the list to
That's
come
great.
on. So I have an idea and it's a matter that has, the task force and this relationship and other key components that I've spoke on, they do all originate. And the theme of this TEDx is like humanity reimagined is the theme.
Okay.
And so again, I'm going to dive deeper into that statement about 3.5 hours to find a room of men and women that just cared enough to make me feel okay to be there.
I love
Right.
that.
And so how do we, in a world where everybody wants to help, right? And everyone thinks that their idea of helping is the best, but then gets really resentful and disappointed when their tool backfired or their tool wasn't successful, failing to take any time to understand that person in the first place, right? So yeah, I'm excited. You know, it is a big deal.
It's
And
huge.
You're gonna rock it, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah, you're
They
gonna
waiting
kill
for
it.
you. They waiting for you.
Yeah,
Big time.
yes,
she
they
keeps
are.
saying tickets. There's only 100 tickets. They're selling out.
I know, it's so
warning.
funny because I saw it on LinkedIn, and myself and Ben were talking this morning, and I was like, "Oh, I gotta be there. I gotta be there." So we pulled it up this morning, and I think one of my to dos this afternoon is I'm gonna get us some tickets
Let's
for
go.
sure.
No,
I'm
it's
excited. November
exciting.
6th, I think it is.
Yeah, and it was in October, but now we're in November because
Okay.
she wanted to make sure to get a specific venue.
Uh-huh.
And it is a beautiful venue for a TEDx, so I understand. But yes, November 6th.
Very cool.
Yes.
Well, I'll be there. And I'm
Yeah,
sure it's
yeah.
gonna be sold out. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to it.
Cool.
It's gonna be awesome.
I think we're up to 14 people, so that's why she's warning us. Is
Oh,
14
really?
people's families might sell out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100 tickets. I would imagine that goes pretty quick.
Oh yeah.
I should make absolutely certain I buy those tickets this afternoon.
This has been. Thank you again, Justin.
Yeah,
for bringing this
Yeah.
out.
Sounds great,
absolutely.
man.
Yeah, no, I
Thank you so
appreciate it,
much.
guys. I appreciate the stories. Really appreciate what you guys are doing. And we'll have to catch up some more offline because if there's anything we can do to promote or push things out to the community more, we would love to be part of that. I mean, I think that's part of just one part of what New Waters is that we really want to help continue to break down that stigma, put that message out there, and the more people that we can reach, the more people that can heal and hopefully have some better lives, right?
And I just want to say, as mayor of Apex, thank you for all you're doing.
Oh, thank
Yes,
you.
this is great.
Thank you.
And I love where you live as well.
That's what I was gonna say. And as a citizen of Apex, I appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you very much.
If you liked what you heard today or just want to know more, give us a call on 919-670-8119 or visit us at newwatersrecovery.com. Thank you.